So today, I'm pretty much just going to spend 10 minutes talking about this thing called the teaching and learning cycle, which is kind of like a recap from the video lecture. And then we'll go through a template which I've created which can help you plan a writing sequence, and then maybe demonstrate a few strategies which are mentioned in there, but we won't have time to do them all. We'll kind of just focus on one thing. I'm just curious to know these four terms that are here: building the field, modelling the mode, joint construction, independent writing. Has anyone not seen these before?
The last two.
The last two, joint construction, independent writing. So you haven't seen those two before? Okay. Mira? You've seen them before?
Yeah, but not.
Yeah, a blurred memory. Yeah.
It might be very easy.
Yeah. Christina, have you seen this before? Okay. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, so we're, like this was adopted, which I'll explain in a minute, adopted like statewide in the 90s for a framework to teach writing. And it's EALD pedagogy, but it was adapted by the literacy and numeracy department area. And you still see it in some publications, but it's usually more towards primary school teachers that it's used more. But it's still good stuff. So we're just going to go over what these four components mean, recap a few things, and then we'll go from there. All right. So last time, when I was talking about an academic text, I put up this Venn diagram and tried to explain that academic writing involves these features. So you have the existing knowledge of the subject. You've got new insights that the writer puts forward, and then linking it together are the writer's writing skills and ability. And sometimes students either churn out a whole bunch of field knowledge, or they give their opinion when it's not connected to field knowledge. But the meshing of the two together, as well as having the skills to be able to communicate it, is what we're aiming for. And that's what I've defined as academic writing. Okay? Expert knowledge of the field and the ability to create new insights is what academic writing is about. Four grammatical features that you can use to start discussions are clauses, verbal groups, noun groups, and nominalization, which you can go through the second E lecture to explain those terms. And when we start to use language like this, especially across KLAs, it's a common language that if it's addressed in different KLAs, should be able to reinforce what we're aiming to do, which is get a basic knowledge of the English language and be able to identify and use and manipulate these features. Okay, so today we're going to acquire some strategies to explicitly teach and assess writing, and the success criteria will hopefully be, after this, to be able to teach lessons that develop student understanding of writing structures and how to craft better written responses, and then to create some resources and lessons that help students to improve their writing. That's what will be the success of today's lesson. All right. Now, just honestly say, so I know if I have to go through this or not, who here hasn't watched that third E lecture? Cool. All right, we'll go from there then. Now, see if you disagree or see if there's something missing here. Right? But I'm just going to put forward that there are four main processes that are required to be able to write well. Some students are more skilled in one or more of these than others. They may have deficiencies in one area, or they may rush over one area. Okay, but the four areas I'm going to say are, first of all, gathering what they need to write through research or knowing the field. Second of all, discerning. So making choices and selecting what they are going to use. Third is the process of composing. So this will be their knowledge of grammar, their knowledge of sentence construction, paragraph structures, etc. And then the process of reviewing after it's been composed and making alterations or confirming whether they've done something well. Is there anything that I'm missing from the writing process that you guys think is also a skill that's needed? Or can we just agree to disagree that this is 4 major?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Do you, just from your own like anecdotal teaching experience, are any of these skills the one that is most lacking in students, perhaps in the senior years? If we talk about the seniors. Okay, reviewing. Why would you say that? Okay. Yep.
Once they've done edited in, that's it.
Okay.
Or once they've finished it, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
What about before the gathering and understanding what they're looking for? Like, I know you've got the student there, but then like understanding the
Yeah, I think that ties into the field tenor and mode,
right.
which is understanding the subject first of all. But you're right. Yeah, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying, yeah, these are the 4 areas. Are there any areas where you think our students are the strongest out of these 4? Or maybe the thing that they do the most in an everyday unit of work that you produce, that perhaps you might not have time to do other things, but you really do focus on one of these 4?
I'm usually helping Sarah's right back at the gathering.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just think I'd spend 6 weeks, as an English teacher, 6 or 8 weeks going through a novel and then handing out the assessment task and giving 4 or 5 lessons in class to compose. But perhaps skipping, the right selection of quotes, or giving them the quotes that they should use or the topic sentences that they should use, and not developing that skill of being able to discern the right choices. So if there was anything that was a lack and still is a lack in my own teaching philosophy, it would probably be discerning, because I kind of scaffold the crap out of everything, because I'm just like a bit like that, a bit OCD. Yeah, so I mean, I talk more about it in the e-lecture about what each of these mean, but I think if we look at it in terms of there are different skills that are required when you're writing, and what may be the deficiencies, there's always a way that you can develop these skills. Okay, so the teaching and learning cycle simply goes like this. Ben, tell me what does field mean? It's because you're on your phone. Field?
Field is what we're talking about.
Okay, so subject can be macro level like science, or it can be really specific like, the DNA structure of something. Depending on how expert you are will depend on how, detailed your field knowledge needs to be. I'll go again, Ben. Mode. What's mode?
Mode is the type of writing structure that you're doing. So, for example, essay, report, recount.
Yep.
Stuff.
Yep. So the text type, or the way that you're going to structure the information you're putting on the page. Okay. So we go first of all building the field, so developing field knowledge. Often we'll spend a lot of time there because it's what actually interests us. Like, we're all content teachers, so we'll spend a lot of time fleshing out the field. Next, what this cycle suggests is that once there's enough grasp of field knowledge, there should be a moving on to the text type that you actually want them to produce and to use this knowledge. So we go to modelling the mode where, giving you a few examples, but you might display the text type that you want them to produce and model the way that they can put synthesize information into the mode. The next two are actually getting students to engage with writing, which is through joint construction, where the workload is shared between teacher and student. And then finally, independent writing, where pretty much students are left to their own devices, but we might put structures over them like time limits or word limits or something like that. But the whole purpose of using independent writing is that it gives you a chance to assess where students are at without hampering them a bit too much. Now, I do go through and explain it all, but I'm just curious to know again, in the booklet, if you just go to the, I guess it's like the 5th page, kind of looks like this. Yeah, I know, rookie. So the 2 reflection questions. Just reflect, and I'd be curious to actually know how this is different in a maths environment, like in terms of how you go through a new concept and how you practice versus when you actually take the reins up and go to independence. But just reflect on the way that you approach planning a unit of work, and just reflect on how you think you may already use this format, or if you may neglect one of these or neglect a few of these, just write down some notes about what you might spend a lot of time on and what you might neglect. And basically, how is it similar or how is it different to how you traditionally would go about planning a unit? Okay, the next question is about a unit that you may be doing at the moment or have just finished. If you had 100% of time, in those 4 boxes, write down the rough percentage of time that you would spend doing each of these 4 elements in your own teaching. So you might spend, let's say, the first 4 weeks out of a 10-week term building the subject knowledge, and so you'd write in 40%. And then if you spend a week on independent construction at the end because you've got an exam, you've got a few practice exams or whatever, then you might say 10% for independent writing. Just try and quantify the... Yeah, kind of like jumping in and out sort of thing. Try and work out the rough amount of time that you would use it. Yeah, I think just the process of that activity, like even for myself, just makes me reflect on how, like when the time pressure is on, and there's, like the holidays are over and now I've got to start teaching this week, and I am not ahead on my planning. I usually find the default is to spend a lot of time here and shift past these to here, just because of the time pressures. You keep engagement up in here as well because, this is where you're doing a lot of research, doing a lot of, reading and, viewing videos and all that sort of stuff. So it's kind of easy. Whereas here, you have to put yourself out there a little bit, and you also have to be really well prepared to be able to command attention and to achieve what you want to achieve. So we kind of just by default skip these, whereas these are kind of like the real critical parts where we actually start to develop writing. And I think it's a real flaw, especially I would say probably up until my final year of teaching full time, I really did spend too much time building the fields just because it was comfortable and easy, and I neglected these. But I just think about the whole PE analogy, where if you don't actually show them how to throw or what a throw looks like, how are they ever going to understand it? And the same is true with writing. You can talk all you want about the different subject areas, but when it comes to writing it, it's a completely different skill altogether. Yeah. So I guess I'm just putting forward the idea that with good planning, we can actually shift the percentages a little bit so we can spend more time on this. and also come to grips that field knowledge, while it's important, isn't the thing that they're going to take with them. It's actually the writing skills. So I'm not going to go through that. That is all on the first page of your booklet, like this information, so I won't spend time going through that. But you can read through it if you want to understand what each of them mean a little bit more. All right. If you flick to the second page, so we're going back in time, we've got this writing sequence planning tool. Now, I'll put it up on the screen. But I kind of thought, if I was really time poor, which I am, but I wanted to have a structure to quickly plan out a unit in one sitting, taking into regard the fact that we've got programs and outcomes already set for us. But if I knew that with my Year 8 class, in 6 weeks' time, they had a discussion essay, or they had a report that they had to write. At the beginning of that 6 weeks, I could sit down and spend like an hour looking over this, and it would give me at least a real quick structure to actually then inform my lessons. Okay, so it's designed to be like a real quick thing that you can do. But I'll just talk through a few elements, and then we'll see what the time is and go from there. It pretty much just covers the things that we've covered over the last 3 seminars. Here we've just got not all of the syllabus outcomes, but maybe just a few content outcomes or skills outcomes that we want to focus on, that we really want to drill in. In English, for example, it might be those outcomes about nominalization or using abstract nouns, or those ones where you have to be really specific to achieve them. Some notes about getting out of your head, what do I actually want to see from my students in this 6 weeks of writing. And I'd write something like for students to produce a discussion essay that genuinely considers multiple perspectives and has an understanding of multiple perspectives. You lay out the time frame you've got, so the amount of lessons that you've got, and then you go through field, tenor, and mode, and put down a few points about what fields you're going to explore, and just flesh out some dot points. Consider the relationship of the text that you're producing, so you can highlight a few there. The mode, which is split up into 3 different text types, so selecting the one that most applies, or writing in the one that maybe won't be there. And then the part which can kind of spark some thoughts. Once you've kind of got that plan set, then we'll consider how we can use the teaching and learning cycle to actually plan out our lessons. Okay. So first of all, in building the field, obviously the goal is to build subject knowledge, thinking about the subject. So I'll just put a range of different activities, which pretty much all of them, if you just Google search them, you could find out how they work. But just selecting a few that most apply, and then going on to the next one and going through them. What I'll actually do, because I know you guys can read, just scan through these 4 here, and and just kind of get the gist of it, and then I'll go on from there. Okay? Just over those 2 pages or whatever. All right. So if we did do a one-on-one discussion, I think this would be the thing that we'd focus our attention on. Strictly because, honestly, when you get caught into the grind of everything, I think you just go to defaults that you just always do, like comprehension questions, a bit of research through watching a video or a library task or something like that, and you kind of get a little bit stale with the activities that you do, or you kind of repeat yourself. So this is simply just a resource just to get you thinking about things that maybe you haven't thought about in a while. So we won't look at that anymore. That's strictly just a resource that I've given you guys. But if we were to meet one-on-one, we'd probably talk about that and look to plan something around that. But pretty much what I wanted to do just to finish is do something a bit more practical and demonstrate a few of the activities which cover multiple elements of the teaching and learning cycle. So they kind of try to not only model the mode but also build the feel at the same time, and try and be as like time precious or whatever as possible. Okay. So if you flick over to this where it's got a few like textbooks on the front, and I'm thinking more for seniors when I'm doing this. Like I'm thinking of the types of courses where you have a lot of content that you go through and you expect a lot of reading from students, but because a lot of that is really technical reading, it can sometimes get a little bit like their understanding can kind of be limited because they don't engage with it. So it's kind of like a scaffolded reading activity, but also there's some writing elements in it as well. And then we'll pretty much be done. All right, so we'll go through this together. You guys can just pretend like you're the students, so to speak. If you flip over to, well, this is actually numbered here, so it says page 2 on the back of that. There's a few descriptions of the strategies that I'm going to go through. Okay, so one is previewing the text, which is just giving a bit of context about the text. 2 is a paragraph by paragraph reading. 3 is note taking. 4 is joint construction, which we won't have time to do meaningfully, but we can at least talk about it. 5 is margin questions, and 6 is scaffolding and detailed reading. Now, flip over. Because I've left something in the staff room, I'm going to get you guys to read the context of this extract that we're about to read, and then I want to come back and go through it again. So if you've just entered into the class, we kind of just start the lesson, and I'd say, all right, today we're going to be looking at a text which is designed to help us understand a bit more about something called shared writing. It's an activity that we can do. I would have gone through the context. I'll just get someone quickly to say, what's one thing that you got from that reading, Christina, about context? Yeah. Okay, cool. The text is written by somebody who is like a university lecturer and also works professionally in a lot of education circles. So she's an expert, and she does have a long line of resources around teaching writing. The part of the chapter that we're going to read out is from chapter 4, which is called Teaching Approaches. We're in the 3rd paragraph, just so you know. I'm going to read out this section. The first 3 chapters describe several theories behind effective writing instructions, ways to assess students' current writing ability, and ways for preparing for new writing experiences. Earlier in this chapter, the writer has summarised some major ways to teach writing in the mainstream classroom. The writer has now begun to go into more detail about each specific writing task that was summarised in the first half of the chapter. The passage we are going to read aims to tell teachers how to use the activity called shared writing and to explain the benefits behind using the strategy to improve student writing. Okay, so that's previewing the text. Now I'm just going to read through just a summary of each of the paragraphs before we encounter the text, and then we'll get into it. So the text, which is over the page, and will hopefully eventually kind of look like this, is 7 paragraphs long, and it follows the structure of a procedure. Okay, so a procedure tells us how to do something. You sometimes see it with like cooking recipes or instruction manuals. but this is teaching us how to do the shared writing activity. Now, if you just flip over the page, if you can number each of the paragraphs 1 to 7, where we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 3 blocks of dot points, 5, 6, and 7. And then once you do that, you can flip back as I go through it. So the first paragraph provides a description of what shared writing means and gives some of the benefits behind using a shared writing activity. Paragraph 2 provides further description of the ways the shared writing activity can be used. Paragraph 3 describes the main feature of a shared writing lesson, as well as the purpose behind this feature. Paragraph 4 explains the reasons the approach is successful, as well as giving some ideas about a time frame for the activity. Then there are 3 subheadings with multiple dot points under each subheading. These subheadings are under a larger subheading that aims to give readers a step-by-step guide for planning a shared writing lesson. Paragraph 5 has 4 dot points that give advice to teachers to prepare a shared writing lesson. These points instruct the reader to use student assessment information when planning. Paragraph 6 has 4 dot points that focus on conducting a shared writing lesson. And paragraph 7 has 3 dot points that focus on reviewing the success of the lesson. Okay, if you flick over the page now, we'll do a few different things. As we go through the reading, I'm probably not going to have time to go through the whole thing, but I'll just demonstrate a few activities and a few ways that you can go deep into this reading as we go through it. So I'll start right at the beginning. The part that we're reading is called shared writing. Tina, tell me why sharing is a good thing. Why is it good to share your lunch with somebody?
Well, you've got that, friendship and social aspect to sharing.
Okay.
That makes it enjoyable.
Yep.
And you each have individual gifts and talents that can be shared and become better when you're sharing with somebody else.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Oh, hey.
Hello. Sorry.
No, that's all right, no worries.
Sorry.
So that's all good responses. So you talked about relationship, you talked about each person having their own unique skills that they bring to the table. Okay, so when it comes to like a writing task, Mira, why would sharing the writing of a task be an effective way to teach people how to write better? Yeah. Anything else when it comes to the whole idea of sharing?
When you do things aloud, they can actually work out what your processes are that you go through. When you start picking, choosing, selecting, eliminating things,
Yep.
you can see how you process your way through making choices.
Okay, yeah, very good. All right, so I'll go through now. If you have a pen or a highlighter, just have it ready because I'll get you to underline a few words as we go through. I don't think I have any highlighters, guys. Actually, I've got one who wants it. First one. Of course. Okay. So we'll go through this first paragraph together. So the whole purpose of going through this is we're trying to actually learn what shared writing is. Okay. As the name implies, this approach involves sharing the writing of text between teacher and student ideas. Did I get this right? This approach involves sharing the writing of text between teacher and student. If you highlight sharing the writing and between teacher and student. Okay. All right, next sentence. The ideas, highlight ideas, are suggested by the students through questioning, discussion, and multiple opportunities to talk. Highlight questioning, discussion, and multiple opportunities to talk. It's really blunt. And the teacher composes them as written text. The teacher writes in front of the students using large sheets of paper or scrapbooks so that the writing can be easily seen by all students. Students watch and contribute to the recording of their ideas. While recording, the teacher provides instruction on specific skills, strategies, procedures, and understandings related to the students' needs. The teacher uses the think aloud approach, which Christina mentioned, to explain the decisions they make as they write. This enables students, highlight students, a further opportunity to internalize the actions and thoughts of their teacher. So highlight, internalize the actions and thoughts of their teacher. So that at a later time, they can try for themselves what they have contributed to and jointly constructed through shared writing. Okay, just quickly, Jess, what's one thing that you learn about shared writing from that reading?
I suppose let's say the end goal about making it clear to them the process. So
Yep.
when you said shared writing, I thought it was going to be shared writing between students.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's what I was thinking of. Each student's going to bring a strength the other might not have, or
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was thinking about shared writing for the teacher and
Yeah.
class.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's essentially joint construction, but it's
Yeah.
focusing, because joint construction can be about other things as well, but it's focusing specifically on sharing writing together. Yep. Do you have anything you want to say?
That's what internalising those things, those thoughts and actions as you've gone through it.
Yeah.
And then for them to try it themselves.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good.
There is one together, not just one.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. All right, so when I started off with the shared writing, when I talked about the word shared, that was an example of like teacher talk, where I was preparing students for what they're about to read, but then also fleshing for prior knowledge, and then elaborating on some of their answers as well. So I was building the field, but in the same right, I could have focused on how the text has a heading, and the heading summarizes the content, which would actually be modeling the mode at the same time. Okay? So, I think when it comes to like a writing task, a reading task, we can already begin to develop awareness of writing structures and not miss opportunities to go through this sort of content. So teacher talk is one way that you can do that. I'll just give one question. I'll give it to David. Why not? He's just had a sip of coffee, so he'll be buzzed. The second sentence of the first paragraph, so just find that for me. The second sentence of the first paragraph tells us that ideas can be developed first by talking about them and giving lots of time to expand on them. Okay, so the sentence that I'm talking about is, the ideas are suggested by the students through questioning, discussion, and multiple opportunities to talk, and the teacher composes them as written text. So you've got that sentence. Yep. At the end of this sentence, it gives the teacher an instruction on what they are supposed to do while students are suggesting their ideas. Tell me, what is the phrase that describes what the teacher does while students are describing their ideas?
Composes them as written text.
Okay, correct. What do you think it means by composing them as written text?
Formalising their thoughts, I'd say, into a sentence of proper structure.
Yep. Yeah, so you mean that as they say maybe a few words, you're actually starting to piece it together for them and adding in additional things?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Why is that something that's beneficial to students?
Showing them how to put their thoughts into an academic sentence.
Yeah, very good. It emphasises a few things. One, that oral language is key to understanding written language, and there's a value that's placed on discussion as opposed to discussion being something that isn't actually what we want, but we want writing. Two, it, as you said, it kind of formalizes the process and actually makes kind of these abstract thoughts into concrete things that can be remembered and referred back to. And three, it helps you to also give feedback and correct maybe incorrect terms or add in new vocabulary that they don't have. So that process of actually supporting students by converting their oral language into written language is an effective way to start to model the expectations of the sentences that you're creating. Okay? Now, this is basic stuff. Like, I'm assuming that we do this, but it's, again, what I'm modeling to you now is not just the reading, but I'm actually modeling you how you could do this with any text that you're talking about, whether it's a reading on, the conditions of World War I or whatever. Well, you're ancient now, so it's different. But, so I'm trying to model that. I was just going back to the glory days.
Yeah, back when,
Yeah.
You wrote that song.
Yeah, it's good. Bake some biscuits. It's great. Yeah. I had flashbacks in the class today, actually, when the other pracky was nervous as anything going away. All right. Enough banter. Does anyone do this? Or has anyone tried this approach before? Yeah? Is it a common thing that kind of happens when you do a reading? Mira? Oh, okay. But you would type up responses and stuff like that when it happens?
When I was using your classroom manual, they have an interactive whiteboard.
No, I only have one of the old interactive whiteboard, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
So I type.
Yeah. No, I've seen you type before. Like, you usually type all the time.
No,
yeah. Scribble it up.
100%. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
It's easier to annotate on this.
Yeah.
You can put a text up and you can
So you project something and
I
then
know.
you scribble on the side as well.
I went from 29 with one of those ones to 27 degrees. This is
Spruiking the facilities.
I try this one.
Yeah, I mean, like, you're still doing the same thing, and I know that you're still discussing it and things like that. But I don't know. Do we rush through readings, or do we leave readings independently sometimes for students to complete with a few comprehension questions? Like, do we have enough time to labour on a paragraph like we've just done? Like, we just spent 9 minutes going over one paragraph. Is that realistic?
If you're doing this stuff in the junior years and it's affecting it, and by the time you're getting to the seniors and they have those skills, it's like teaching historical skills. You're teaching, teaching the skills so that by the time they're in year 11 and 12, they can do stuff.
Yeah.
It's the same with literacy.
Yeah.
Doing that, then you hope an ideal world that you can just focus on the content, or you can do things like this because they're already.
Yeah.
That's the push for the progressions anyway. Remove the content and attach the skill.
Yeah, or put emphasis on the skill. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And it's like fast track classes you can do more often. In the fast track English class that I had when they had a research assignment on Shakespeare. So I had the text printed out rather than them finding the text. And we, as a class, did, I modelled how to do that questioning, so, and we put the paragraph together.
Yeah.
They wrote down the paragraph that we all wrote together.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to scaffold it so that people don't get distracted and or not sure what they're doing. Like, make it obvious for them. Yeah. Just for time's sake, because I don't want to keep you longer than what we said, so we'll be done in 5 minutes. We'll pair up. Now, if we went through this, we would have highlighted the whole thing, we would have talked through it, and we would have gotten a lot from it. I'll just get you to flick over to page 6, which looks like this. Now, one person's going to be the scribe, and the other person's going to have the text open, and there's lots of ways that you can do this. You can take text away from students and just get them to actually write down what's been highlighted, or you can have the whole text in front of one person and take the text away from another. With the junior class, you probably just have the text in front of them because the goal is to create some notes and to get them to practice writing sentences. But in this case, one person's not going to be looking. Okay, you can only use oral language to kind of communicate it. It's a very simple read-write task where you're actually basically just rewriting the key points. Okay, so you've got a whole bunch of sentence starters there. Some of them come from the text, and some of them aren't worded the same as the text. But the goal is just to kind of complete the sentence. Okay, using the information that's been highlighted. You can do the other paragraphs if you want to get extra points, but because we only read through paragraph 1, all I'm expecting is the first 5. Okay, so who's scribe? Scribe?
Okay.
David, scribe. And scribe? Cool. Yeah, essentially. Yep. It's pretty much like a dictogloss, but it's focusing on them converting what they've read into their own sentences. So you're giving them sentence starters, but. Alright, so because we're done on time, I'll just stop there. So there's more.
Paraphrasing.
There's more to that activity, but on the page where it describes it, you can actually read a bit more about what else you can do with that. But it's pretty much a combination between a dictogloss and using sentence starters to summarize. But you're also starting to lead them into creating full sentences, okay, and using new terms that they maybe haven't used before. I guess the thing that comes after this is that using that scaffold, you can design a writing sequence, okay, and give that a go and see if it's actually beneficial to you. And the second thing would be if there is one of these elements that you commonly neglect, like joint construction, that could be something that you experiment and focus on in the last few weeks of term when all the reporting's done to kind of get you ready for next year. Could be a good chance to experiment with, something that you don't often do. Okay, but other than that, we're all done. Thanks, guys.